Hello, world. Welcome to another episode of the Alter Your Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Ben, your host. I'm a naturopathic doctor empowering you to heal yourself with whole food, plant based nutrition, as well as mind body medicine. And today on the podcast, we are entering back into the realm of the anti nutrients. Of course, last week we talked about oxalates. Today, we're going to be talking about lectins, those scary proteins, those scary compounds, those phytonutrients. And next week, I guess we'll talk about what the next one is, which we'll keep that as a surprise. What is the next one? Lectins, oxalate. Oh, phytates. Ooh, that's the F word that starts with a PH. Phytates. Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about lectins, what they are not, and why you may or may not want to be afraid of them. And spoiler alert, as the title of this episode is explaining, really, there's no need to be afraid of them. And a plant-based diet, a whole food plant-based diet that's rich in fiber and carbohydrates and proteins and fats, as well as phytonutrients, a whole food plant-based diet is also rich in lectins. And we're going to be talking about why actually the presence of lectins makes a whole food plant-based diet one that is anti-inflammatory, and also anti-cancer and immune stimulating, and all of these kind of attributes that a whole food plant-based diet has really come down to nutrients such as lectins. So we're going to get into the science. And this episode is going to be a little bit different. I'm glad that of those of you that are watching it and tuning in live and also watching the recording either on Facebook or on YouTube. I'm going to be sharing my screen and doing a little bit of show and tell. And in preparation for today's talk on lectins, I went into the realm of Instagram, the realm of Instagram that I actually honestly haven't really been a part of, but I went on Instagram and searched for hashtag lectins. And I'm going to share with you what I found, because some of these are really silly little memes. And then I'm also, of course, as I said, I'm going to be sharing some scientific studies that have come across that really portray the healing power of lectins. So I guess we can start with some memes, right? And I'm sorry for those who are just listening to the audio. The meme experience is a visual one, but I'll do my best to just briefly explain what we're looking at here, right? And here's the Willy Wonka meme. Oh, you avoid lectins? Please tell me about the research you've done on the topic. Really good, right? Because once you start doing the research, once you start looking at the science, it kind of all falls apart. Lectins are part and parcel with whole plant foods, which have so much going for them. And yeah, we'll talk about like the poisons and toxins that are in plants that are lectins, and maybe this is a good segue, right? So there are poisonous toxins in plants, and some of those poisonous toxins are lectins. And the most famous one is a compound called ricin. Ricin is a lectin that is isolated from the castor bean. And actually, castor oil is a really healing compound. Castor oil is a product that is used topically and in other products. And actually, some people take it internally for specific purposes, but that's kind of another conversation. But castor bean has ricin in it, which is a toxic lectin. And ricin has been isolated and used in biological warfare and is really deadly and poisonous. So yes, if you eat that, or if you consume that lectin, if you drink it in high enough amounts, you can die, and you likely will die. The other kind of toxic lectins are predominantly found in kidney beans. And I believe it's just white kidney beans that have the highest amount of them. And if you eat white kidney beans that have not been cooked, then you could have like lethal amounts of this lectin in your system. But I guess beyond there was an incident of people grinding up and using white kidney beans like as some diet weight loss strategy, and a lot of those people died. Or I don't know how many people died, but a lot of people have had severe digestive issues as a result of taking in toxic amounts of this plant lectin in kidney beans. And the cool thing is that you can eliminate this lectin, the presence of this lectin, by simply cooking the bean. And I believe it's just like 10 minutes, which isn't even a well done bean. A lot of people think, oh, you got to cook you got to cook your beans like till they're really well done. You got to pressure cook them, yada yada yada. And yeah, there's reasons to cook your beans till they're well done, but in terms of eliminating any potential harmful lectin content, it just takes like 10 minutes, which again is going to be a very al dente bean. I don't think I'm going to want to eat any bean that has been cooked for just 10 minutes. But 10 minutes, again, is enough to eliminate any of the toxic lectins that might be in beans, such as those white kidney beans. I believe other kidney beans have these lectins as well. And I guess I kind of dove in a little quick. So, what are these lectins? First of all, they're a protein that are like any protein found abundantly in nature. Again, ubiquitous in all whole plant foods. Some foods have higher amounts of lectins, like the beans. Pretty much all beans and lentils and legumes. Whole grains have a considerable amount of lectins. Peanuts are a legume, and a legume that happen to have a good amount of lectins in them as well. But the lectin, and I guess again, like lectins and oxalates and all these kind of compounds, people just kind of lump them all in like one ball. It's like, oh, lectins, don't eat them. But there are many different types of lectins. And again, ricin being kind of the most deadly, toxic, harmful. The lectin, I don't know if it has a name. I'm sure it does have a name. I don't know the name of the lectin that is in the white kidney bean that is also kind of toxic and problematic. But there's a lot of lectins that are present that are no problem at all. And in fact, very health promoting. So that's what lectins are. And again, that's what the food groups that are richest in lectins, again, are the legumes, the whole grains, nuts and seeds in general are higher in lectins. And then there's unique lectins that are present in a lot of nightshade vegetables like eggplants and tomatoes. And, nightshades kind of have their own bad reputation going for them, irrespective of lectins. And I'm not going to get into the nightshade conversation too much today, but well, maybe we should get in there someday, because a lot of people are afraid of tomatoes and other vegetables in the nightshade family. And potatoes are also in the nightshade family. Goji berries are in the nightshade family. And a lot of people like hear nightshade and think like belladonna. And it's like your potato and your tomato and your goji berry are pretty unique and distinct from belladonna, which is the deadly nightshade, which, yes, there's a lot of toxic plants and a lot of toxic compounds in plants that can harm you and even kill you. And luckily, there are way more non-toxic compounds in plants and way more non-toxic plants that will heal you. And of course, there is actually a time and place for homeopathic belladonna, homeopathic deadly nightshade. It's real medicine, homeopathy, of course. Not suggesting that you go out and source any belladonna. But anyway, back to my little meme collection, because this kind of points us in a good direction, I think. So here's another one. What are anti-nutrients? Oh, fear-mongering. Lectins, oxalates, phytates. Again, we talked about oxalates last week. Oh, kidney stones. We debunked the whole kidney stone thing last week, right? We're talking about lectins tonight or today. What are they telling us about lectins? Bind to minerals and stop their absorption, damage the gut wall. And wheat and soybeans and peanuts and tomatoes are high in lectins. Next week, we'll talk about phytates. Bind to minerals, stop their absorption. Oh my gosh. So it just so happens, like we talked about last week with oxalates, it just so happens that all of the phytate-rich, oxalate-rich, lectin-rich whole plant foods are also mineral rich. And it's in fact the lectins and the oxalates and the phytates, which we'll talk about next week, that bind onto the minerals and bring them into your body. We wouldn't have our vitamins and minerals and nutrients in our plants if it weren't for these other coexisting phytonutrients like lectins, oxalates, and phytates. And just because there's some bad actors like ricin in the uncooked white kidney beans, all of these lectins get lumped into this category, and then just get like any food that contains lectins, which, by the way, it's pretty much all whole plant foods contain some amount of some lectin, just like pretty much all whole plant foods contain oxalates and phytates and so many other phytonutrients and fibers and vitamins, minerals. Yeah, it's all in there. But that does not mean that it's problematic. So here's another funny one. All right. So it's a group of monkeys looking at this computer, and then there's like this chief monkey, this old monkey, and the monkey says, "It says we have to stop eating plants because of the lectins." And of course, it's a joke. Yeah, yeah. And here's a good one. I don't know. There's lectins on this, so I guess that's why I got the hashtag foods that everyone should avoid. And now I agree with most of this. I agree with most of this. So it's wheat, which again, wheat is just like a whole plant, and then gluten, which is so this is not very smart because gluten is a protein in wheat as well as barley and rye. And then processed carbs. Yeah. Most people are consuming wheat and quote unquote gluten in the form of processed carbs. So, yes, processed carbs definitely should be avoided. Vegetable oils definitely should be avoided. I think we'll do a whole conversation on seed oils, which have become very a hot topic. Like everyone wants to ditch seed oils. Yeah, we've been preaching that one for years and years now. And then lectins, everyone should avoid lectins. Well, lectins are in wheat, and a lot of people. I've heard some misinformation as well that gluten is a lectin. That's a new one to me. But lectin is a protein that's in like every plant food. Soy. Here's the next one. Soy. And of course, there's like a carton of soy milk, which soy milk is not soy. Soy is a legume, and soy is not problematic in its whole natural organic form. Conventional soy products are very problematic. Fake meat, that's a big category. Yeah, I think everyone should avoid really highly processed fake meat. But what else is fake? I mean, some people eat like what jackfruit. That's pretty like benign, and like jackfruit, sure, is that fake meat? What about mushrooms? Is mushrooms fake meat? Like, yeah, we should avoid processed foods. And sugar, oh my gosh, sugar. Maybe we'll do another episode all about sugar, because sugar is such a bad word, but sugar is the fundamental fuel for every one of our cells. So no, we shouldn't avoid sugar. It's really simple. We should avoid processed foods and animal products, because animal products are lower in nutrient density and accumulate toxins from existing on the planet, and they're just unnecessary. So yeah, anyways, just trying to pick apart and debunk some of these memes here. Hopefully you get a kick out of it. And then lectins. Oh, hashtag lectins. These foods are high in lectins, something your gut can't digest, and they can wreak havoc in your body. Well, we're going to talk about how your gut does digest them. And in doing so, actually, your gut transforms, your microbiome transforms in a positive way, similar to the digestion of compounds like oxalates, to have beneficial impacts on the body. And I have to, the next one is kind of like the king of the lectin fearmonger, and that's the plants paradox. Have you guys read this book, come across the work of Dr. Stephen Gundry? Great guy, honestly. Just very, very a good businessman. Got a good business model. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but very, very misleading, very, very fear mongering, talking about all of how the vegetables that you eat are killing you. Yeah, it's simply not the case. Okay, but here's another post from Dr. Stephen Gundry. Here's the yes list of beverages. So you can drink coffee, low sugar kombucha. Okay, I'll agree with that. The third on the list, Dr. Gundry MD's powder supplements. For sure, drink those. Yeah, absolutely. San Pellegrino. Okay, spring water. Why not? And all unsweetened tea. Well, I thought that like in the whole context of these anti-nutrients, compounds like tea and even coffee have like tannins that also block nutrients absorption. So I don't know. I'm not really sold on like this. Like I don't know where this list comes from. And then in moderation, dark spirits. Like what is that? The devil? Dark spirits. No, I think it's like, what is it? Like whiskey instead of vodka. Wine, red wine, champagne. Wait, champagne is not a dark spirit. Champagne's pretty light. I don't I don't know what dark spirits are. Sorry, I'm just reading this and getting a laugh, getting a kick out of it. Um, but this is the next one is the best one. So Gundry MD, the author of The Plant Paradox, telling you what you should and shouldn't drink. And as well, he's got his list of foods that you should and shouldn't eat. By the way, you shouldn't eat any of the lectin plant foods, you should be eating the animal products and oils and stuff like that. But when you do follow his diet and avoid lectins, be sure to load up on these things: your vital reds, your power blues, your complete plant protein shake, your primal plants, your energy renew. So he takes all of the plants that you shouldn't eat and he powders them up and puts them into these containers and sells them for probably 10 times what they're actually worth, and makes a lot of money selling his books, fear mongering, and then selling the answer to the problem. What is that? The Hegelian dialectic: problem, reaction, solution. So the problem is the reactant, the problem is the lectins. The reaction is, oh my gosh, we got to eat a low lectin diet. And also the solution: when you eat the low lectin diet, then we'll supplement you with all of these other phytonutrients that your body does need, because these are good things. These vital reds, I think they're essentially just the nutrients from things like beets and apples and our red foods, because we should be eating the rainbow, because our nutrient dense whole plant foods that are phytonutrient rich, all of those phytonutrients are antioxidants that have different color profiles. So we should be eating the rainbow in our whole food form. And maybe there's a time and place for these kind of supplemental things, but certainly we should be eating the whole foods as well. So, he's got one more product. Lectin Shield. Lectin Shield, Gundren MD, supports intestinal health, promotes digestive strength. So this will really keep you safe from the lectins, right? Oh, yes. Okay. All right. So thanks for indulging me in my little meme collection here. Hopefully you guys got a kick out of that one. So back to the show here. What did that bring up? So the potential problem with lectins that they say like the conventional dogma around lectins, and it's not the conventional, it's kind of a fringe thing that has become more mainstream, is that lectins will wreak havoc on your gut. I guess you read that in some of the memes. They're going to cause digestive inflammation and gut health issues, and they're going to block nutrient absorption. And the fact is that is completely scientifically unproven in any way, shape, or form. The only thing that is proven is that those uncooked kidney beans that do contain lectins do cause digestive upset. Now, digestive issues are super complex. And I think that there's something to be said for and again, this is a whole nother conversation in and of itself, but the conversation around the organic and the conventional grains and legumes. If someone's eating conventional legumes, conventional grains, conventional, produce in a lot of sense, they're contaminating themselves, and they're introducing antibiotics into their system in the forms of pesticides and herbicide residues that's going to, yes, wreak havoc on the gut and kind of disrupt the microbiome and lead to increased intestinal permeability and leaky gut issues and potential sorts of like autoimmune, quote unquote, sort of syndromes and symptoms and that whole thing. But the cause is not the proteins that are in the plants. The cause is the toxins that are contaminating the plant products. So we just have to be really careful with what we're believing, because maybe someone's eating like beans and they're thinking, oh yeah, I do have gut issues. It must be the beans. It isn't the beans though. It is not the beans. So we talked about cooking beans and cooking grains, and obviously like a lot of these lectins and quote unquote, because again, lectins it's a big category of compounds, but there's a lot of compounds that are in these whole plant foods that need to be cooked in order to be optimally digested. So I talked about like how I talked about how cooking beans for just like 10 minutes eliminates any degree of toxic lectin that might be present in that bean. But the fact is that when you cook beans more thoroughly, and when you do use a pressure cooker, it does make the beans more digestible, because it's breaking down other compounds and other fibers and other nutrients that allow you to access the fuel and the nutrients in those whole plant foods more efficiently. So yeah, there is something to be said for eating your beans and legumes and grains like well done and well cooked. Obviously, the grain situation is completely separate, and maybe there is even something for sprouting your legumes and letting them soak. And allowing them to kind of activate and kind of eliminate some of these compounds. But in terms of digestive health and digestive function, that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about just kind of like your body's ability to access the nutrients. And this conversation, we'll talk a lot more about it in terms of phytates next week, because phytates, I think, get kind of the when people are talking about soaking nuts and seeds and legumes, it's really a matter. That's really what they're doing, is they're eliminating the phytates in there. And we're going to talk next week again about kind of the risks and the pros and the cons of soaking your nuts and seeds and legumes and whole grains, and why you actually might want to not do that. So spoiler alert. So what else? Yeah. So let's talk about the science. I guess we've kind of set the stage well enough. Let's talk about the science of eating lectins and how lectins are in fact very powerful in terms of promoting health and cancer prevention in the body. So here's a study looking at plant lectins in cancer prevention and treatment. And the conclusion is pretty. Gosh, I should have zoomed in. I took these screenshots and I should have zoomed in on the conclusive remarks. And I can't. Dang it, I can't zoom in. But anyways, the conclusion is that plant lectins are very protective against cancer. And they are so by stimulating the gut and stimulating digestive function, stimulating the microbiome diversity, and thereby also stimulating the immune system. So yeah, plant lectins are very powerful compounds in terms of cancer prevention. Here's one, white kidney bean lectin. So that toxic one exerts anti-proliferative and apoptotic effects on cancer cells. So the thing is, we talked about when you eat white kidney beans that have been cooked, you pretty much eliminate all of the lectins, at least any sort of toxic amount of lectins. But I also said how when you do cook those kidney beans, there's other sorts of compounds and lectins that are not completely deactivated. And those compounds that are digestible and do have this kind of stimulating effect on the gut and kind of help the microbiome adapt in beneficial sorts of ways also have these direct anti-proliferative and apoptotic effects on cancer cells. And what that means is, obviously, anti-proliferative means that they stop cancer cells from proliferating, from growing. And not only do they stop the growth of cancer cells, apoptotic means that they stimulate different pathways within the cells that directly kill cancer cells, which is very, a lot of cancer drugs this is what they're trying to do: stop proliferation and kill cancer cells. So lectins are, in fact, one of the more powerful cancer drugs, which leads me to another. I don't have a study on this. I probably should have looked one up, but there's alternative cancer therapies. Maybe you've heard of mistletoe being used. Mistletoe in kind of low potency, diluted mistletoe extract being taken intravenously, injected into tumors directly. And it's really the mistletoe. Mistletoe is, of course, a plant, and it's the berry of the mistletoe. And these berries have specific lectins that are very anti-cancer. And a lot of the mistletoe extracts are standardized by their lectin content. So again, it's these lectins that are very immune stimulating, anti-cancer. And a lot of people, this is kind of reductionistic stuff, but a lot of people kind of intuitively understand that, because when we look at populations around the world that eat more plant-based diets, these are, of course, populations like the blue zones. We see very low rates of cancer in these populations. The more plants that someone eats, the less cancer that they have, the less chronic disease that they have, and therefore the longer, healthier lives that they have. And, you could single in on any one of these compounds. And one of the compounds that you could single in on is lectins, because again, a plant-based diet, plant predominant diet is going to be a lectin rich diet. And again, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. That means that we are stimulating gut function, immune function. And by the way, there's also research around lectins and lectins effect on the gut microbiome in a positive way that enhances weight release and weight maintenance. The microbiome that's associated with digesting and breaking down lectins is one and the same with a microbiome that helps to manage and release weight efficiently. So all of these things are connected. So going on into the study realm, lectins, here's another one, lectins as bioactive plant proteins, a potential in cancer treatment. And I would say that, yeah, it's not only a potential, it's a reality, you know? And I guess, there is a fine line in terms of cancer treatment and cancer prevention, because yes, plant lectins are very clear in cancer prevention, but to go as far to say as they treat cancer, that's kind of another thing. But the moral of the story here is that we should be eating more lectins, not only if we don't want to get cancer, which I assume we all don't want to get cancer, but if we want to have healthy, long lives. Here's health benefits of potato. This one just caught my eye because you guys know my love affair with potatoes. So the health beneficial properties of potato and compounds of interest. And of course, in this study, they're looking at a lot of things that are present in the potato, one of which is the lectin, the potato lectin. And they are finding all sorts of, you can probably maybe read this one, as there are many biological activities attributed to the compounds present in potato, some of which could be beneficial or detrimental depending on specific circumstances. A long-term study investigating the association between potato consumption and diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, and cancer while controlling for fat intake is needed. Oh, that's not really what I was getting at. It's just telling you that you need to do more research. Okay, well, okay, well, I guess this isn't. There was some good information in this study, but the abstract says that, unfortunately, it's a little bit of a downer, I have to admit. However, epidemiological studies exploring the role of potatoes in human health have been inconclusive. Dun 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 dun. Ho hum. All right, inconclusive. Well, I'm here to tell you that I eat a lot of potatoes and I feel great, and I know a lot of people who do. And by the way, for those of you who are not versed, I'll get to that study in a second. For those of you who are not completely versed on the whole food plant-based diet, I'm not talking about French fries. I'm not talking about, what else? How else do we eat potatoes? Potato chips. Not talking about hash browns with bacon and eggs and stuff. Not talking about I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm talking about real whole potatoes that have not been, fried and not been cooked in all these oils, because potatoes are starch rich, fiber rich whole foods, and they're a great source of fuel. And once we start introducing too many fats in with that, then we actually interfere with proper metabolism and breakdown and conversion of that food into energy for our cells. So the last study that I have here, maybe some of you peeked and saw it, lentil lectin derived from lens culinaris. I don't know which lentil that is. Exhibit broad antiviral activities against SARS-CoV-2 variants. So, nowadays on PubMed, just on a little tangent sidebar, whenever you search for anything, there are so many studies around COVID stuff. There's been so much crazy, silly research. I'm sorry, that's my bias and judgment. I think it's kind of silly. I think a lot of it is silly. But there's been so much research on COVID. And I don't know. I mean, I think that research dollars can be maybe spent in a better way. But obviously, the information that we get from these sort of studies is eating lentils helps protect you from getting COVID. So again, one of the ways that might be is by the presence of lectins in their immune stimulating, immune enhancing properties. Whew. So I guess that's about a wrap in terms of lectins. Hopefully I've sold you all again, but that's not my point. My point is not selling you anything. My point is helping you understand the kind of objective reality in which you live so that you can make informed, thoughtful decisions for yourself rather than reading some book from a salesman and kind of drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak. And so I know we don't have too many Kool-Aid drinkers in the audience, but you get the idea. You're thinking for yourself, you're being kind of critical in your mindset, and you understand like, oh, those people eat a lot of plants and they look pretty healthy. Oh, those people like, it's you just connect the dots and you see like lectins are not a problem. Of course, with the exception of things like ricin and things like the white kidney bean lectin that needs to be cooked in order to be properly digested. But as I wrap up today, I wanted to leave with just a couple of announcements. I got it to talking about potatoes and my love affair for potatoes, and talked about oil and fat and metabolism, and how when we're eating potatoes and starchy rich whole plant foods, it's important that we be mindful so that we optimize metabolic efficiency. Well, if that's sparking curiosity and the gears are turning inside of your head, then you should join us starting next week for our whole food plant-based challenge. This is the Eat More, Weigh Less challenge. And this is not just some gimmick, okay? This is talking about how to heal your metabolism, how to optimize your metabolic efficiency so that you can eat the potatoes and plenty of them to your heart's content and convert that potato fuel, that potato energy, into cellular energy within your body, within your cells, rather than store the potato energy around your waist or your butt or your hips or things like that. So eating more to weigh less. It is a thing. It is real. And I hope you're able to join us next week. You can learn more at www.alter.health. I believe there's a little pop-up there to join the challenge. And the last thing is, if you're looking for a little bit more support, if you're looking for maybe some recipes, a little bit of a community thing, then I encourage you to join the Meal Guide membership. That is just $11 a month, and we will give you a weekly meal guide. This is not like an instructional manual of eat this, don't eat that. Well, I guess it can be. You can treat it as that, but it's really just inspiration to eat, to prepare healing whole plant foods in your kitchen. So join the Meal Guide membership. You can learn more at www.alter.health/meal-guides. And I guess that's it for now. So next week, we will be talking about those phytates, the last of the three major quote unquote anti-nutrients. And it should be fun. We should wrap up this little series here on anti-nutrients and kind of debunking some nutritional myths. And I'm sure there's a lot of other nutritional myths out there. Maybe that should just be this whole podcast, just debunking the nonsense. But a lot of it is more nuanced. A lot of the nonsense is more nuanced. So I also want to respect and acknowledge that it's not just like as cut and dry, maybe as even I make it sound. There is more nuance to life. So hopefully you can appreciate that. But I just want to, again, clear the space, clear the energy so that we can be more objective and critical thinking as we approach our nutrition and our lives and our health. Thanks for being with me again, as always, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys next time.